She protected a student from bullets, unaware the child was a mafia leader's daughter. Tall buildings stood like silent guards, watching over people who lived between fear and hope. Above them all rose the old academy, stone walls marked with age, history, and ancient symbols no one remembered clearly anymore. Elara walked the academy halls as she did every night. She moved slowly, her footsteps soft, her presence almost invisible. She wore no crown, no fine clothes, no sign of power. To the world, she was only a caretaker, a woman whose duty was to protect students, guide them safely, and remain unseen. But Elara was more than that. Long ago, she had sworn an oath made not with words but with her life. She had promised to protect the innocent, no matter the cost. That promise had already taken much from her, her past, her name, her dreams. Tonight, she felt uneasy. The lamps along the corridor flickered as she passed. The air felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Elara paused near the tall windows and looked outside. Rain fell in thin lines, washing the streets below. Something was wrong. She placed a hand over the small silver mark hidden beneath her collar. It warmed under her fingers, a warning she had learned to trust. Her heart beat faster, but her face stayed calm. Elara, a small voice echoed behind her. She turned and saw a young girl standing alone near the classroom doors. The child could not have been more than 8 or 9 years old. She wore a simple uniform, her dark hair neatly tied. But it was her eyes that caught Elara's attention. They were sharp, observing. Too knowing for a child. "Why aren't you in the dormitory?" Elara asked gently. "I couldn't sleep," the girl replied. It felt like something bad was coming. Elara knelt so they were eye to eye. "You did the right thing coming out. Stay close to me." The girl nodded without question. That too felt strange. As they walked together, a deep sound echoed through the academy. The bells, they had not rung in decades. The sound rolled through the halls, low and heavy, shaking dust from the ceilings. Doors creaked. Windows rattled. Elara stood still. The bells only rang for one reason: danger. She took the girl's hand. "Do not let go," she said firmly. The air shifted. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls. From the far end of the corridor came hurried footsteps, too many, too fast, and not belonging to anyone who should be there. Elara stepped in front of the child without thinking. Figures appeared, their faces hidden, their presence cold and wrong. They moved with purpose, as if guided by orders spoken long before tonight. Elara felt the old power stir inside her. No, not yet. She had sealed that part of herself away years ago. The figures raised their hands. Time seemed to slow. Elara turned slightly, shielding the child with her body. Her mind filled with memories she had tried to forget. Another night, another place, another choice that had cost her everything. A sharp sound broke the air. Pain bloomed in her side, burning and deep, but she did not fall. The girl gasped. "You're hurt." Elara stayed standing, her body trembling but unbroken. She pressed a hand against the wound, feeling warmth beneath her fingers. The silver mark beneath her collar burned now, alive and angry. The figures hesitated. They had not expected resistance. Elara raised her head, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The ancient symbols carved into the academy walls began to shine, responding to her presence. "You will leave," Elara said, her voice steady. Now, the power in her words was old, binding. The figures stepped back as if pushed by an unseen force. The shadows withdrew, melting into corners, into cracks, into nothing. Silence returned. Elara's knees finally gave way. She collapsed to the floor, breathing hard. The girl knelt beside her, panic clear on her face. "Please don't die," she whispered. Elara smiled weakly. "I'm not going anywhere." The girl hesitated, then leaned closer. Her voice dropped so low it was almost lost. "My father will come," she said. "He always does." Elara frowned slightly. "Your father," the girl met her gaze. "They call him many names, but in the city they fear him." Elara's vision blurred. "What is his name?" she asked softly. The girl leaned closer and whispered it. A name that echoed through the city's underworld. A name spoken only in fear or respect. A name tied to power, darkness, and control. Lucian Vale. Ilara's breath caught. Before she could speak again, the world faded. She woke surrounded by darkness and quiet. The scent of roses and smoke filled the air. Ilara lay on a soft surface, her body heavy, her wound wrapped and warm. Above her, the ceiling rose high, carved with symbols of power and rule. She was not in the academy anymore. Footsteps approached. A tall man stepped into the light. He wore black, his presence commanding without effort. His face was sharp, his eyes cold and controlled, but beneath them lay something deeper, something tired, dangerous. Lucian Vale looked down at her. "The guardian who stood between my daughter and fate," he said calmly. "I did not expect to meet you like this." Ilara tried to sit up, but pain stopped her. "She is safe?" Ilara asked. Lucian's eyes narrowed slightly. "Because of you." Their gazes locked. In that moment, something unseen passed between them. Recognition, tension, a pull neither could explain. Outside, the city waited, and fate had begun to move. The first thing she felt was warmth. Not the sharp pain she expected, but a steady calm that wrapped around her body. The second thing she noticed was silence. Not the quiet of the academy halls, but something deeper, controlled, guarded. She opened her eyes. The room was large and dim, lit by tall lamps made of dark glass. Long curtains fell from the ceiling to the floor, blocking the outside world. Symbols were carved into the walls, old and careful, meant to protect rather than threaten. Ilara tried to move. Pain answered, firm but distant. "You should not do that." The voice came from the shadows. Ilara turned her head slowly. A man stood near the window, his back to her. He was tall, still, and dressed in dark clothes that seemed to absorb the light around him. Lucian Vale. She remembered the name like a sudden weight on her chest. "You are awake," he said calmly. "That is good." Ilara swallowed. "Where is the child?" Lucian turned to face her. His expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. "She is safe," he replied, "resting, surrounded by guards who would give their lives for her." Ilara let out a breath she did not realize she was holding. "Then my work is done." Lucian studied her closely, as if weighing something unseen. "That is where you are wrong." He stepped closer. Each movement was slow, measured, not threatening but full of control. Ilara felt it, the way he carried authority without raising his voice. "You protected her without knowing who she was," he continued. "You stood in front of danger without hesitation." Ilara looked away. She was a child. That was enough. Lucian stopped beside her bed. "Most people would have run." Ilara met his gaze. "Most people have not sworn the oaths I have." For a moment neither spoke. The silence between them felt heavy but not empty. Lucian finally asked, "Who are you?" "Ilara," she said. "That is all I am now." He noticed the pause before her answer. "Now," he repeated. She did not respond. Lucian straightened. "You are in my residence. Few are allowed here, and even fewer leave unchanged." Ilara's fingers tightened slightly on the blanket. "Am I a prisoner?" Lucian considered her. "No, then why am I here?" "Because enemies do not miss twice," he replied, "and because the mark you carry is older than this city." Ilara froze. "You noticed," she said quietly. "I notice many things," Lucian replied, "especially things connected to curses." At that word the air felt colder. Ilara closed her eyes. "I wanted no part of this life anymore. And yet it found you," Lucian said. "Again." He turned away and moved toward the door. "You will remain here until you are healed." "That was not a request," Ilara said. Lucian paused. "No." He left the room without another word. Days passed. Ilara healed slowly. Servants came and went, silent and respectful. Food appeared without question. The wound in her side faded, though the mark beneath her collar still burned at times. She was not locked in, but she was watched. Each night she sensed Lucian's presence nearby, always distant, never crossing the line into her space. She wondered why a man like him would care so deeply about one child, yet rule an empire built on fear. One evening the door opened softly. The girl stepped inside. She smiled when she saw Alara. "You're awake again." Alara smiled back. "I am." The girl climbed onto the chair beside the bed. "Father says you are very brave." Alara shook her head. "I only did what I had to." The girl leaned closer. "Do you know why they wanted me gone?" Alara hesitated. "No, because I am the end of something," the girl said quietly, "and the beginning of something else." Those words should not have come from a child. "Who taught you that?" Alara asked. The girl shrugged. "The city did." Footsteps echoed in the hall. Lucian appeared in the doorway. The girl stood immediately. "I should go." Lucian nodded once. She left without protest. Alara watched him carefully. "You teach her discipline early." "She teaches herself," Lucian replied. "That worries me more." He moved closer, stopping a few steps away. "You feel it too, don't you?" Alara nodded. "She is bound to something ancient." "So are you," Lucian said. Alara looked up sharply. "I know what you were," he continued. "A guardian sworn to kings long fallen, banished not for failure but for loving where you were forbidden." Her heart tightened. "You should not know that," she whispered. Lucian's voice softened slightly. "I know many forbidden things." "Then you know why I hid," Alara said. "Why I buried that power." Lucian met her gaze. "Power does not stay buried forever." A deep sound echoed through the palace, distant, low, the bells. Alara sat up despite the pain. "They are coming again." Lucian's jaw tightened. "Yes." "For her?" Alara asked. "For everything," he replied. Servants rushed through the halls. The calm broke. Lucian turned to leave, then stopped. "Stay here." "No," Alara said, forcing herself up. "I will not hide while a child is hunted." Lucian hesitated. "If you awaken what sleeps inside you." "I know the cost," Alara said firmly. "I paid it once." Their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them, respect, fear, longing. Lucian nodded once. "Then we stand together." That night the city trembled, not from noise but from unseen movement. Old forces stirred. The palace wards glowed faintly, responding to Alara's presence. She stood beside Lucian on the balcony, looking out over the city lights. "You rule this place like a king," she said. "I rule it like a guardian," he replied. "Just like you." She turned to him. "Guardians lose everything." Lucian's expression darkened. "I already have." Below them the bells rang once more. Alara felt the mark burn brighter than ever. Fate was no longer waiting. It was knocking at the door. Alara stood alone in the chamber given to her, staring at the faint glow on her skin. The mark beneath her collar shimmered softly, as if breathing. It had not done this in many years. She pressed her palm over it, trying to calm it, but the warmth only grew stronger. It knew. The curse had found her again. She remembered the last time this feeling had touched her, long ago, when she had been young and sworn to protect a throne that no longer existed. Back then she had believed duty was stronger than the heart. She had been wrong. A soft knock came at the door. Lucian entered without waiting for permission. "You feel it," he said. Alara nodded. "It has awakened." Lucian closed the door behind him. His face was calm, but his eyes were dark with worry. The city's old guards reported strange signs, symbols glowing, streets emptying without reason. Alara turned to face him. "The curse is stretching, testing its reach." Lucian studied her. "Testing you." She met his gaze. "Yes." They stood in silence for a moment. The space between them felt fragile, filled with words neither wanted to speak. Lucian finally broke it. "Tell me the truth." Alara's shoulders tensed. "Tell me who you really are," he said. "Not the caretaker. Not the guardian who hides in halls. The woman the curse remembers." Alara looked away. "I was once called something else," she said quietly. "A title, not a name. I belong to the Crown of Dawn, a line of rulers sworn to protect balance between power and mercy." Lucian's eyes narrowed slightly. "I have read of them. They vanished centuries ago." "They were broken," Alara replied. "By fear, by control. By rulers who believed love was weakness. She swallowed. I was chosen as a guardian, bound to serve, never to choose. Lucian stepped closer. But you did. Yes, she said, and I paid the price. The mark flared brighter. Lucian raised his hand but stopped short of touching her. The curse tied to my family began the same way. Alara looked up sharply. My ancestors sought control over fate, Lucian continued. They bound power to blood, to heirs, to promises that could not be broken. The child, Alara whispered. She is the final key, Lucian said. If the curse completes itself through her, nothing will stop it. Alara's heart tightened. Then she must be protected at all costs. Lucian's voice dropped. Even if it costs you, Alara did not answer. That night, Alara dreamed. She stood in a place made of light and shadow. Old pillars rose around her, cracked but standing. A throne sat empty at the center. You ran once, a voice said. She turned and saw a figure shaped like herself but older, worn, tired. I survived, Alara replied. You hid, the voice said. I protected others, she answered. The figure stepped closer. And now fate has found you again. Alara woke with a sharp breath. The mark burned like fire. She knew what she had to do. At dawn, Alara asked to see the child. They met in a quiet garden hidden within the palace walls. Light filtered through tall trees, touching stone paths and still water. The girl sat calmly, feeding small birds from her hand. You are not afraid, Alara said softly. The girl smiled. I am used to danger. Alara knelt beside her. Do you hear whispers? The girl nodded. Sometimes they say my future is already written. Alara's chest tightened. Do you believe them? The girl thought for a moment. Number Father says the future can be changed. Alara smiled sadly. He is right. Lucian watched from a distance, his expression unreadable. Alara, the girl said, why does the light answer you? Alara froze. What do you mean? When you came here, the girl said, the palace felt warmer. Lucian stepped forward. Enough, Alara stood. She already knows, Lucian sighed. Too much for one so young. The girl looked between them. You are both afraid, Alara nodded. Yes, but not of the same thing, the girl added. She walked away quietly, leaving them alone. Lucian turned to Alara. The curse is growing faster than expected. It recognizes her as its end, Alara said. And me as its gate. Lucian's jaw tightened. Then I will destroy it. You cannot, Alara replied gently. It was built on sacrifice. Lucian looked at her sharply. I will not sacrifice you. Alara's voice softened. That choice may not be yours. The city darkened that evening. Lights dimmed. Winds rose. The old symbols carved into the palace walls glowed brighter than ever before. Alara stood in the central hall, preparing. Lucian watched her in silence. You are planning something, he said. She tied a simple ribbon around her wrist. I am remembering who I was. Lucian stepped closer. If you do this, you may not return. Alara met his eyes. If I do nothing, the child will lose her future. Lucian reached out and gently took her hand. The contact sent a quiet shock through them both. For a man surrounded by shadows, Alara said softly, you still believe in light. Lucian's voice was low. Only because you stand in it. For the first time, his mask cracked. Do not leave without a fight. Alara smiled sadly. Then walk with me to the edge. Deep beneath the palace lay an ancient chamber. It was built before the city had a name. Alara stepped into the center of the room. The symbols responded immediately, rising into the air like living things. Lucian stood at the boundary. Tell me how to stop this. Alara turned back one last time. Protect her, teach her mercy. The mark flared bright. The chamber shook. Old power awakened fully. Alara lifted her hands and the light wrapped around her, pulling her toward something unseen. Lucian shouted her name. She looked back, her eyes glowing softly. Whatever happens, you were not born to be a monster. Then she stepped forward and vanished. The chamber beneath the palace was empty now, yet the air still vibrated with energy. Alara had vanished into the currents of the curse. leaving only faint light trails that lingered like whispers. Lucian Vale stood at the edge of the ancient circle, his eyes fixed on the glow that refused to fade. He had feared this moment. He had feared losing her, and yet a strange calm settled over him. He understood now that this was not only a test of power, it was a test of the heart. Outside, the city slept under a fragile peace. Rain drizzled down narrow streets, carrying the scent of stone and wood. The people below were unaware of the silent war unfolding in the shadows above, of curses old as the city itself, and of two souls bound by fate struggling to bend destiny. Lucian's hand clenched into a fist. The child, the girl he had promised to protect, was safe, watching from a distance. Yet her safety meant nothing if the woman who had shielded her was lost to the currents of ancient magic. He stepped forward, his boots barely making a sound on the cold stone floor. The glowing symbols around him pulsed faster, responding to Ilara's presence. "Ilara," he called, voice echoing, "I am here. I will not let this take you." A soft wind stirred the light trails. Ilara's voice whispered back, calm yet distant. "You cannot break what is not meant to be broken, Lucian, but you can choose what comes after." Lucian froze. Her words carried no fear, only trust. A warmth spread through him, a reminder that even in shadows, light existed. He knelt at the center of the circle. "Tell me what to do," he said. "I will follow, even if it costs me everything." From the currents of light, Ilara's figure began to take shape. Her eyes shone with a soft golden hue, her hands glowing as though holding the very energy of the curse. She was both ethereal and real, a guardian of balance and mercy. "The curse," she said, "feeds on fear and control. It was made to bend the will of children, of heirs, of those with power, but it can be rewritten." Lucian stood, feeling the weight of the moment. "Rewrite it." "Yes," Ilara said, "but it requires sacrifice, not yours, mine." "No," he whispered, "you are not leaving me." Ilara smiled faintly, sadness and strength mingled in her expression. "I am not leaving, Lucian, but I must face it fully. Only then will it end. Only then will the child be free." Lucian shook his head, desperate. "I cannot lose you, not after," he stopped, unable to finish. "You will not," she said. "The choice is not mine alone, nor yours alone. Love, mercy, and courage, they are stronger than fear. We can bind the curse together, but only if we trust each other completely." Lucian took a deep breath and extended his hand. "Then we face it together." Ilara took his hand. The light flared around them, swirling like a storm of fire and wind, yet it carried no threat, only purpose. Symbols carved into the chamber walls glowed brighter, responding to their joined will. The curse rose around them, a dark presence, swirling like smoke yet solid in its intent. It pushed, pulling, testing them. Memories of fear and pain tried to anchor them apart. Lucian saw visions of the city burning, of the child lost, of power slipping from his hands. Ilara held tightly to his hand. "Do not fear," she whispered. "The curse only has strength if we believe in it, but we will choose differently. We will rewrite it with mercy." Lucian's voice grew firm. "Then we choose differently." They lifted their joined hands, and the light surged outward. The dark smoke of the curse hissed and recoiled, unable to contain the purity of their combined will. Symbols etched in stone began to move, floating upward, rearranging themselves into new patterns. The chamber trembled. A wind roared through it, and yet the ground did not break. The energy of destruction had been replaced by energy of creation, mercy and love shaping reality itself. Lucian watched as Ilara's glow intensified. He saw the curse dissolve not with violence but with light, and in that light he saw her. She was safe. She was whole. When the final pulse faded, the chamber was still. Ilara collapsed into his arms, exhausted but alive. Lucian held her tightly. "You did it," he whispered. "You saved her, you saved all of us." Ilara's eyes opened slowly and she smiled softly. "We did it." For the first time in centuries, both of them felt the weight lift. The palace no longer hummed with danger. The city, unaware of the miracle above it, remained quiet and peaceful. Later, as the sun rose, Lucian led Alara and the child to the palace balcony. The rain had stopped. The streets sparkled with early light and the air was calm. The child ran to Alara first, hugging her tightly. "You came back," she exclaimed. Alara ruffled her hair gently. "I promised, and promises must be kept." Lucian watched quietly, feeling a warmth he had not known he could feel. His empire, his power, his name, they mattered less now than the fragile life standing before him and the woman he had come to trust, respect, and love. The child looked at Lucian. "Father," he smiled, softer than he had in years. "Yes, little one. The world is safe, thanks to them." The girl nodded, understanding that the power of love and courage had triumphed over fear and control. Alara stood beside Lucian, their hands brushing. Neither spoke at first, but neither needed to. Words could not contain what they had endured. Lucian finally said, "You could have been lost to the curse forever." Alara shook her head. "Only if I had given in to fear, but mercy is stronger than fear." He nodded, and for the first time he allowed himself to imagine a future, not ruled by shadows but guided by trust, love, and choice. The palace no longer seemed dark. The city no longer seemed dangerous. And in that light, even centuries of pain felt lighter. Days passed and the city began to notice the subtle changes. Old enemies retreated quietly, as if they knew the balance of power had shifted. The child laughed freely, no longer shadowed by fear. And the palace, once cold and heavy, felt alive with hope. Lucian walked with Alara through the gardens. "You return not only yourself, but hope," he said. Alara smiled. "Hope is not mine alone. It belongs to anyone willing to choose mercy, even in the darkest hour." They paused near a fountain, water sparkling in the sunlight. Their hands touched fully this time, fingers intertwined. Lucian's voice dropped, soft but certain. "Then let us choose together, always." Alara nodded, feeling a peace she had never known. "Together." The child ran ahead, laughing, her joy echoing across the palace. Lucian and Alara watched her, the weight of the past finally lifting, replaced by a promise of new beginnings. And above them the city stood still, watching as two hearts, scarred, brave, and bound by fate, found each other at last.